ओम भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ओम शांति 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 या तदक्षरम् अधिगम्यते
तदक्षरम् अधिगम्यते.
The Upanishad started with the parampara. Okay, there is a sampradaya, a teaching methodology, and then there is a lineage in which this teaching methodology is coming. So that lineage started with Brahmaji, who is the creator of everything, Vishwasya Karta, Bhuvanasya Gopta, and also one who sustains it. He is the Devanam Prathamaha, the foremost among the Devas. And then in that lineage, Angiras also is there, and he is a Jnani. To this Angiras, Shaunaka goes, and Shaunaka is already an accomplished person. He is a great Grihastha. He is a Mahashalaha. Mahashalaha means one who has a great Shala, you can say. Shala means any establishment or a house. And in that, the adjective Mahashala actually indicates that lot of Yaga Shalas are there with Shaunaka. He has done many yagas, lot of karma. And after doing all that, he has gained a certain Vairagya, that we have to understand from that. He has understood the limitations of his own accomplishments. And then he goes to Angiras. And how does he go? He goes Vidhivat. So he goes as per the stipulation. So you have to go to your Guru with a certain attitude and also ready to serve in any way. So that's why, in fact, there is a popular saying also in Sanskrit, Rikta Panim na gaccheta. So don't go empty handed. Okay, Rikta Panim means without anything in your hand. So you should not go empty handed to three places. The saying is Rajanam, to the king. You should not go empty handed. Always you have to take some tribute, presents. And then Daivatam, to the temple also if you go, let us say. So when you go to see a deity also, we take some offering always. And then Gurum. So Rajanam, Daivatam, Gurum. So for these three people, you go always with something to offer. Like that, that's a general saying. In this Upanishad itself, later on we will see you have to go with a Samit in your hand, Samit Panihi. Okay. So Samit here is a fuel. Okay, it is twigs, which is useful to do all these different homas, karma. So you are ready to do anything it indicates. So like that you go with the Samit in your hand with a Samit Pani is what is said. So Shaunaka goes to Angiras and asks a very interesting question. Kasminnu bhagavo vijñāte sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati iti. So by knowing which, everything else also is known. Is there anything like that he wanted to know? Teach me about that. So that is the question. Okay. Then to him, the answer was not straightforward. Okay, the Guru answers in his own way. So he does not directly start teaching about that thing, knowing which everything else is also known. Instead, the answer was, we saw already, he says dve vidye veditavye. So two types of knowledge are there, okay, to be attained. Like this, Brahma vido vidaha vadanti, those who know Vedas. So the word Brahma has many meanings. One of those meanings is the Vedas themselves are known as Brahma. That's why if you even go to Upanayana, there is a Brahmopadesam is what it is known as, correct? So the Gayatri mantra is given by the father to the child, and that particular ritual is called Brahmopadesam. Why? Because there the Gayatri mantra itself is taken as representative of the entire Veda. Okay, and so the whole Veda is as though given as Upadesha to you. Like that, it is called Brahmopadesam. So Brahma word has one meaning as Veda. That's why Brahmachari also. So Brahmachari also means the same thing. Brahmam charati iti Brahmachari. So there the one who goes to study the Veda is called a Brahmachari, the student. So like that, in those cases Brahma means Veda. Here also Brahma Vidaha means those who know the Veda say that there are two types of things to know. Okay, two types of knowledge to be attained, gained. And what are they? They are Para and Apara. So there is a Para Vidya and there is an Apara Vidya. So why this Angiras has to talk about Para Vidya and Apara Vidya also? We can raise a question. So why like this? In fact, Shankara actually asked this question in the Bhashya. And then one of the reasons is what? You should always present all the notions which are going around, correct, at any point in time, and then establish the Siddhanta, okay, the whatever is the right conclusion, you can say. So there is always a Purva Paksha and a Siddhanta in the Shastra. So you have to first present the Purva Paksha. Sometimes if you read some of these books and all, they call it prima facie view and all that. Okay, so prima facie view means what? Whatever initially you think what it is. Okay, and again, or traditionally we call Purva Paksha. Purva Paksha means, again there also the Purva means something which is said initially, before you actually establish the truth or the actual meaning of something, you present all the contentions, you can say, okay, the different contentions, the different opinions and views which are there, and amongst that you have to finally establish one as this is the right thing, okay, this is the right understanding. So that is called as Siddhanta. So there is a Purva Paksha, there is a Siddhanta. So now here there were a lot of ideas about what is Brahman. Okay, even with those who called themselves as Vaidikas also, they have their own notions about what the Veda actually teaches. That is why even today we have a lot of differences. Like there is, some people say Vishishta Advaita, Dvaita, then Advaita also is one more philosophy and all that. So like that there are contentions going around. So in this case there is a Paravidya and there are Aparavidyas. Now what are all these Aparavidya? Angiras starts enumerating. So in that you have Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. All these Vedas themselves are told as Aparavidya. Not only that, all the Veda Angas, there are Shad Angas are there, Shiksha, Kalpaha, Vyakaranam, Niruktam, Chandas, Jyotisham, these are also shown as only Apara Vidya. And there are other, we have to understand, other than this also we have Upaveda, like that. Okay, so for each Veda there is a Upaveda. So the Ashtadasha Vidya Sthanani, like that 18 disciplines of traditional knowledge are there. Okay, so we can count all that, everything is Apara Vidya. Again here there is a question, if the Vedas themselves are Apara Vidya, then what about this Brahman which you say is also learned from the words of the Veda? Okay, so that is where again Shankara actually in his commentary raises this point and answers nicely. So when we say here this Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, all the 4 Vedas themselves are Apara Vidya, that is only, the meaning of that is only the words of the Veda are told as Apara Vidya. Shabda Rashi, like that Shankara says. So the words of the Veda themselves will not give you knowledge, correct? Everybody, every Vedic Pandit, every priest in the temple knows lot of Veda mantras. They all study Taittiriya Upanishad at least, minimum. They all know how to chant Taittiriya Upanishad. And so just by learning that, one cannot say that one has that knowledge. So, or even those who academically study to get a PhD, they also don't gain any knowledge. So many people have even translated Brahma Sutra, they have translated Upanishads. So they were interested in getting a PhD and a tenured professorship and whatever. If they have got that, they are happy with that, I think. Of course, after that they can bash Hinduism and all that. That's a different thing. But here, so the idea is, how do you learn is very important. So you have to choose to know Brahman. Here again Shankara actually tells very nicely, you have to have Vairagya and choose to learn Brahman, and then go to a guru and then try to understand these words, correct? So then only you can actually gain this knowledge. Otherwise, and actually by Paravidya, what is Paravidya here? Yaya tad aksharam adhigamyate. So by which you gain this aksharam Brahma. That alone is Paravidya. Means that vritti, that cognitive vritti which takes place in your buddhi, okay, or in your manas. Because even Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Manasa eva anudrashtavyam. So only with this antakarana, with this mind, you have to know Brahman also. But how, what kind of a mind is important? A mind which is already mature, okay, emotionally mature, cognitively also it has certain capabilities, and one who has Vairagya, one who has understood the limitations of all other pursuits, and now one who wants moksha. So only a mumukshu choosing to know Brahman and going and learning it from a guru will get this Paravidya. All others are only having words. Words in themselves do not mean anything. For the word to become a Shabda Pramana and operate and give you the result properly, you have to also prepare yourself in certain ways. You have to be a qualified person to receive this knowledge. So for such a person, this Brahma Vidya you will get, okay, it is gained in the form of Paravidya. So Paravidya is that. Everything else is Aparavidya only. Then why do we even talk about this Aparavidya? So like this, there is a question is raised actually. That is because the Aparavidya also is necessary for you to have this Paravidya. There is a connection between Aparavidya and Paravidya. Because even language, grammar, logic, which is Nyaya, all these things are Aparavidya only. But even with all this Aparavidya, these things are all important for you to learn Paravidya also. Okay, because the same logic we will use to understand Brahman. Of course, what we call as Shruti Sammata Tarka, we say a logic which goes along with what is revealed by the Veda is necessary even to analyze the Veda Vakya and arrive at what is the Tatparya, what is the ultimate intention of the Upanishad, what does it really want to teach you. To even arrive at all those things also, you require certain infrastructure, correct? In your Antakarana, you require a certain cognitive skill, you require certain emotional maturity. So, all these things are all part of Aparavidya only. So, Aparavidya becomes a means for gaining this Paravidya. So, it also has to be talked about. But Aparavidya in itself is not going to give you this Brahmavidya, correct? And it is not Brahmavidya. Because why it has to be told as Apara is, there were other people, Purva Mimamsakas, who say that, or even today there are Arya Samajis, they say that you have to learn the Veda and do all the karma, and then you can go to Swarga. Going to Swarga alone is moksha for them. Okay, and they say you can be in Swarga for a long time. I don't know, many lakhs of years and all that. But that's kind of a thought also is there, correct? So all those things, any karma you do, correct? Because here also again one more important thing we have to distinguish. So if we say the understanding of the words alone is Paravidya, then somebody can question, what about all the things revealed by the Veda in the Purva Bhaga? So I read all those words, I know how to chant it, and I also understand their meaning. Now will you say that that is also Paravidya? Because you said only the words of the Veda are not Paravidya, but the meaning of those words, if you understand properly, then it becomes Paravidya. Means, what about the Purva Bhaga of the Veda? Like that, there can be a question. So for that also we have to say this doing means it is a karma phala. Wherever karma phala is involved, it is all limited. The results are always limited, and that cannot be moksha. That clarity has to be there. Because in this Brahma Vidya, Paravidya, there is nothing to be done. Understand that. As soon as you know, that's it. There is nothing more to be done. Because you are going to know yourself as Brahman. That is the whole idea of this this Paravidya. Because that is the Aksharam Brahma, which is the limitless which never declines, correct? Aksharam means na charati. It does not become old, it does not become, it cannot be eroded and all that by time. So that which is always there and that which is limitless, that Brahman, knowing that Brahman as oneself is that Paravidya. Everything else is Aparavidya. Whether it is revealed by Veda or some other means of knowledge, doesn't matter. So that clarity we have to have. So that is what was explained. So Aparavidya was talked about, and what is Paravidya, one has to be clear. Okay, so Paravidya is nothing but Yaya Tad Aksharam Adhigamyate. Now what is this Aksharam? That also has to be told very clearly. Okay, that's what we are going to see now. That is in the next mantra, we will see that. Okay, so here just I'll try to make it easy for you. You can chant with me. Yattad adreshyam. Yeah, yattad adreshyam.
यद्
यत्र
तद्दृश्यम्
दृश्यम्
अग्राह्यम्
अग्राह्यम्
अगोत्रम्
अगोत्रम्
अवर्णम्
अवर्णम्
अचक्षुश्रोत्रम्
अचक्षुश्रोत्रम्
तदपाणिपादम्
तदपाणिपादम्
नित्यम्
नित्यम्
विभुम्
विभुम्
सर्वगतम्
सर्वगतम्
सुसूक्ष्मम्
सुसूक्ष्मम्
तदव्ययम्
तदव्ययम्
यद्भूतयोनिम्
यद्भूतयोनिम्
परिपश्यन्ति धीराः
परिपश्यन्ति धीराः.
So this is a beautiful mantra here. So in this Brahman, what is this Brahman is clearly shown. Okay. So that which yatad adreshyam. So dreshyam, adreshyam means that which is not, which cannot be seen, okay, as an object, okay. So again here when we say seen as an object means not just with your eyes, okay, but even through any other sense organ also. It is not an object of any sense organ, nor your mind also. You cannot objectify in your mind. Because there are certain things like black hole, let us say, black hole cannot be objectified by any sense organ because even light does not pass through that. That's what scientists say. But as a concept, you are still objectifying it. So here something which cannot be an object of your sense organs nor your mind, adreshyam. Okay, sense organs I cannot see, but like a blind person can still go and hold on to something, correct? So immediately Upanishad says what? Agrahyam. You cannot do any grahanam of it, okay? You cannot hold it. You cannot go and shake hands with Brahman, okay? Why? But later on also it will say apanipadam, but here anyway. So agrahyam means what? You cannot hold it. You cannot. It is not an object of any karmendriya also, because the adreshyam negated Brahman as not something which can be objectified by your jnanendriya or the sensory, all the senses which we have, correct? Sensory, it's not an object of sensory perception. And similarly, agrahyam negates Brahman as not something which can be objectified through your karmendriya also. It is not an object of your karmendriya, okay? Like you can't go and shake hands with Brahman or hold it, agrahyam. Then another interesting thing, agotram. Okay, so normally everybody who is born has a gotra, correct? If you don't know your gotra, generally we say Kashyapa gotra or Vishnu gotra, like that some people will say. But anything which is born is having a gotra, let us say, a lineage, because there is a cause, correct? So, but Brahman is not something which is born. It's not born in time, or it is never born at all. It is an uncaused cause, because even when we talk about this cause effect, you have to go and stop somewhere, correct? Otherwise it will become an infinite regress, because you can keep on asking who is the cause, or who or what is the cause of something. Like that, if you keep on going, you have to stop somewhere. There has to be an uncaused cause, okay? So that is what agotram. So agotram means Brahman does not have any beginning. Okay, it is never born. It is always there. So agotram. Then what further? Avarnam. So varnam again can have many meanings. One meaning is color, correct? Varna means color. So Brahman is not a dravya or a substantive where some quality is there, okay, a guna. So here varna actually is a substitute, is also means any guna. Okay, basically Brahman is not having any quality in itself. So it doesn't have any particular color, white, black, like that, or any other quality also. Okay, color, varna may also mean size. Okay, Brahman is neither big nor small, like that. In fact, other Upanishads also talk about like this. In Kathopanishad also, there is a particular verse, okay, which says that Brahman is not available for any sense object and all that. And in fact, even says Anoraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan and all that. It is again a very interesting. So it is smaller than the smallest which you can think of, and larger than the largest which you can think of again. That means it is beyond all your conceptions, whichever way you try to conceive it, because it is the basis for everything. Understand that. So that's what this avarnam here means, color, size, like that. There are no qualities in Brahman. It doesn't have any quality. Varna also can mean like jati and all that, correct? So Brahmana, Kshatriya and all, we have Varna Ashrama Dharma. So Varna can also mean a group. So you can say, does Brahman belong to some particular group? Also there can be a question. That also this avarnam negates that also. Brahman does not belong to any group. In fact, it is ekameva advitiyam, like that Chandogya Upanishad says, Brahman is ekam eva advitiyam. It is one, okay, one only, okay, ekam eva, and advitiyam also it says non-dual, one without a second, one only without a second, like that explicitly it says. So that which is without a second cannot belong to any particular group, any category. It cannot be even categorized. So that is what this avarnam is all about, because if you just say one, because the three words are there, correct? Ekam, eva, advitiyam also, when we analyze that, we say that it is for sajatiya, vijatiya, swagata, beda, rahitaha. Like that in Sanskrit we say. So Brahman does not have sajatiya bheda, means what? See, cow, if you take cow, you say there is one cow, means you can also say there are 2 cows, 3 cows and all that, correct? So that means it is there is a sajatiya bheda within the same jati or category. You have many, and you say this is one among that. So one, if you say it is only one, means there is no other of the same category. One indicates that. But one only, ekam eva, means vijatiya beda also. Okay, it doesn't have anything else, also is not there. Any other category things are also not there. Brahman alone is there. But what if Brahman alone is there? It is one. But what if there are parts in Brahman? Okay, Brahman, like tree, one tree is there, but within that tree there are branches, roots, leaves, flowers, fruit, all that. Does Brahman have? That is called swagata beda. Or even if you take a human being, you have all these sense organs, you have then again legs, limbs and all that. Karmendriya also is there. So is it like that? No. Brahman doesn't have any bheda. Swagata bheda also is not there. That's why Advitiyam, without a second. So within itself also there is no part. It is a partless whole. And that we can easily understand because in your own idea about yourself also we are always partless. In our own understanding of ourselves, I is always a partless whole. Understand this. Even if a person loses his leg, he doesn't become 3/4 eye or anything like that. The I is a partless whole, and that we can appreciate that when we actually look at how we understand ourselves. So that partless whole, it is a partless whole. That's why it is avarnam. There are no gunas. There are no parts also within that. Okay, that is this avarnam. So like this, negatively, first we have to define Brahman because there are misconceptions. So even today people think that you go to heaven and Brahman is sitting there, correct? You go to Golok Brindavan, you go to Vaikuntham, you go to Kailasam. All these ideas are there. And they also say, I will be happily in the presence of Brahman, I will be doing Kirtan, I will be having a party, maybe. Each person has his own idea. Some other guy says, I will be playing cricket with Bhagavan. With Krishna, I will be having Leela. And that is the ultimate moksha. But here clearly Upanishad says, there is no chance for all that. Brahman does not have, it is not an sense object. It is not an object of your karmendriya also. It doesn't have any qualities. It's a partless whole and it is never born also. It is always there already, agotram. Okay, what if Brahman itself is a sense organ? That's the next question you have, correct? So Upanishad says, Achakshushurotram. Brahman itself is not a sense organ. Okay. So Chakshu and Shrotra are given here, others also we have to understand. In fact, Kenopanishad beautifully says, Brahman is Shrotrasya Shrotram, Manaso Manoyate, Vachoha Vacham, Sau Pranasya Pranaha, Chakshushas Chakshuhu, Atimuchya Dhiraha, Pretya small lokad, Amrita Bhavanti and all. There is a beautiful Kenopanishad is there. So this Brahman is the Shrotrasya Shrotram. It is the ear of the ear. Hey, what is this ear of the ear means what? Because Brahman is consciousness. And that consciousness only knows whether your ear is actually hearing or not, correct? So I have to ask you, can you hear me? So the one who knows whether the ear hears is Brahman, not the ear itself. Then what about eyes? The one who knows whether the eyes can see or not is Brahman. Okay, Manaso Manaha, the one who sees whatever is happening in your mind also, all the different thoughts which are running. Okay, so one who is the witness of all the thoughts, those thoughts themselves are rising and falling in the same consciousness only. So it is the mind of the mind. So like that, Brahman is that conscious entity which is not any one of these senses, but the senses themselves operate because of the sentiency derived from Brahman only. And so that is Brahman. So it is not any one particular. So here again this Achakshu Shrotra means we have to take the entire Sukshma Sharira. Okay, it is not just the sense organs only, but we have to even consider mind, intellect, all those things, memory. So Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chittani, like that. Sometimes when we talk about the Antakarana, we talk about it in fourfold way. Okay, so we have a mind, Manas. Okay, Then buddhi, intellect. Then chittam is generally looked upon as all memories. Then ahankara is the ego. So like this also we look at it. So manas is primarily sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. Nishchayatmikam buddhi and all like that. There are some definitions are there. So the mind is the one which thinks, okay, and which is also the basis for all your emotions based on your thinking. So it has its own doubts also, okay. All the doubts, emotions, everything is part of mind. Then buddhi is something nischayatmika, means it is the one which decides, logical thinking, okay, is all part of buddhi, intellect. Then chittam is all memory, as I told you. So like this, ahankara also is there, which is the ego, the I sense. I did it, that idea. So all these things are part of the ahankara. It's all part of your sukshma sharira, as we talk about. So because there is a sthula sharira is there, the physical body. Then there is a subtle body or sukshma sharira. So sukshma sharira, if it is there only, we say the person is alive, correct? The physical body alone doesn't make a person. If the sukshma sharira leaves the physical body, then the person has gone to another loka. We have to consider, that's how we see at least, that jiva will take another body. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani and all Bhagavan says in Bhagavad Gita also. Once this, like we change shirts, correct? Let us say a shirt has become old and it is worn out. Then you replace it with a new shirt. Like this physical body also is worn out. How many days you would like to live in this old body? So sometimes these old people do say, I am just waiting for Yama to come and all that. Like that they talk. But of course, whether really they want to die or not is another thing, because the survival is an instinct. So even if they may be saying, I am waiting for Yama and all, but if Yama comes, they'll say, okay, why don't you come tomorrow? That is the general idea there. That's how people are. But anyway, so the idea is, once this body is worn out, means your karma is gone. Okay, because all bodies are made with a prarabdha karma. Karma also we have to bring in here. And once the karma is exhausted for a particular body, then the sukshma sharira will leave that body and then it has to take another body to exhaust some more karma. So like that, it keeps on going, correct? So that sukshma sharira also is not Brahman. Brahman is not the entire, it's neither the stula sharira also. That's why apani padam. Next immediately, tad apani padam means what? Brahman does not have any stula sharira. So you can't go to heaven and shake hands with Brahman. Okay? Although that's what many people want to do. Most religions are also like that, correct? They are giving you nice heaven, wine will be there. It will be flowing like river, it seems. So you can go and take and enjoy. Whatever you could not enjoy here, or whatever, you made it immoral here. Having wine in the earth is not correct. Okay, but in the heaven you can go and enjoy that. And that's what is taught as a theology also, and people buy it. I don't know how, but that's how it is. So there you can teach anything and there will be followers. That's what I think in this world. So there is no big deal about that. So here you can't go and shake hands with Brahman or anything. Brahman does not have any stula sharira, apani padam. He doesn't have any feet or any hands, any limbs basically. So it is partless. That's what. Okay. Similarly, it itself is not any sense organ. So it is neither stula sharira, Brahman is shunya. So there is also one contention like that, correct? So some people say Anatma. There are Anatmavadis are there. The highest reality is Anatma. There is no Atma. Only Shunya, and that is Nirvana. So if you know yourself as, I don't know, nothing, Shunya, and that becomes Nirvana. So how is it also is very difficult for me to understand even that. Because even to cognize the Shunya, there has to be somebody, correct? So there is really nothing Shunya. See, understand one very interesting thing. In our tradition, zero is called Pujya. So that's a very, very interesting word. Pujyam is there even in Tamil, and Pujya has to be there even in all North Indian languages. So why do we say zero is basically nothing, correct? It is vacuum, whatever you can say. Numerically it is zero. Physically if you say it, there is nothing has to be there, that is zero, let us say. But that is Pujya. Pujya means what? Something which has to be worshipped, which is worthy of your worship. So why do we call it Pujya? Because you remove all the name and form, you can negate everything, and what is left over is consciousness. The negator cannot be negated. Everything else can be negated. And whatever is left out after you negate everything is consciousness. That is Brahman. That is Pujya. That is Purnam. That is the whole, the partless whole. That consciousness is Pujya. So there is nothing called zero or vacuum. If you remove all the subject-object divisions, all types of divisions you can negate. But what remains is Pujyam. That is worshipful for us. That's why it is Anoraniyan also. Even if you go to quantum level and go beyond whatever is quantum also, what is sitting there is this consciousness. Or you say it is the limitless, you go cosmic, everything, whatever was there even before Big Bang also is this. And even after the Big Bang also what is there is this only. That's consciousness. That's why it is Anoraniyan, Mahato Mahiyan. Everything is the invariable in every cognition, that consciousness. It is the basis for the entire universe. So that has to be now told. Okay. So that has to be clearly told, because otherwise if we leave it here, there can be a confusion whether Brahma, anything like that is there or not, whether it is Shunya. No, Nityam. So now positively Upanishad is giving you Nityam. So that which is there always, eternal. So eternal here means not a long period of time. See, generally in language we say you wait for somebody. Generally they don't turn up, correct? Somebody asks you to come somewhere, wait for them. You are supposed to meet, the other person doesn't turn up. Then particularly when you are waiting for somebody, every minute seems like whatever, an age, okay? Then finally when the guy comes, you say, I was eternally waiting for you. Now eternally there is not a right usage, but we do sometimes say like that. So a long time is called eternal. No, eternal here when we say that which is not subjected to any time at all. Understand that. That is eternal. So Nityam, that which is the basis of the very space-time, that which is not affected by anything which is there in the space-time. That is Nityam, that is the real eternal, which is not subjected to time. Then what? Okay, so it is not subjected to time, space-time. So is it is something sitting outside space-time or what? No. Vibhum. So Vividham Bhavati iti Vibhu. Okay, Shankara, the commentary says. So Brahmadi Stavaranta bhutaihi. Like that he says, from Brahmaji onwards to a stavara, means a small plant, okay, or a grass. Okay, Brahmadi stamba paryantam also sometimes we use these expressions. So from Brahmaji, who is Prajapati, who is the creator, okay, of everything, to a small grass, blade of grass, everything only this Brahman has become, or it is manifest as Vibhu. So here Vibhu means, again we have to understand Brahman is the cause of everything. It is the material cause. Okay, because normally, again, how did it become? Is a question will come, correct? Because different types of becoming is there. So finally, we have to say it is manifesting as, because become means milk becomes curd. Okay. So milk is the material cause for curd, but in the process, milk itself is not there anymore, correct? That is called parinami upadana karanam. Okay, something becomes another by changing its very nature. So Brahman is not a parinami upadana karanam. That's why Nityam was already said. Okay, it is there always. Trikale api tishtati. In all times it is there as it is, without changing its nature. But it has become everything also at the same time. How? So this is where we have to understand Satyam and Nithya. Again understand, Nityam means, another important point is Agotram means Brahman does not have any beginning. Nityam says that Brahman does not have any end also. Okay, because it is not subjected to any time. So Agotram means beginningless, it is uncaused, it is there. Nityam means endless, it is always there. That also we have to understand. And Vibhum means that which is always there without changing in any way its own nature, has become this entire creation. How does it become? Okay, like we say, that is the Vivarta Upadanam. We talk about Vivarta. Like the gold has become bangle, like the gold has become a chain, or like the water has become a wave, or water has become ocean also, correct? So these are all some Vivarta Upadana Karanam. Without having changing one's own nature, the cause becomes the effect. Okay, the Karana becomes the Karya without losing its nature. That is very important. That's what is said in the other mantra also. There is a Purnamadah Purnamidam. In the end we chant, correct? So that meaning also you have to understand. So Purnam Adaha. So that is Purna. That means before this creation got manifested, whatever was there, like you can say modern language means before the Big Bang, whatever was there, they say singularity and all that. In fact, they also use a term similar to Upanishad, because Chandogya Upanishad says Ekameva Advitiyam. Modern scientists say that is, they call it a singularity and all that, but whether there is also a lot of confusion whether really a Big Bang happened and all that. Anyway, so they may come up with some other theory also. But what the Veda says is that this Brahman was there. When it was there, before any creation was there, also it was there. It is Purnam. It is whole. It is complete. Then Purnam Idam. Right now, whatever is there, this world also is Purnam. Okay. So this also is whole. This also is complete in itself. Then the interesting mathematics, arithmetic comes. Okay, so Purnamadaha Purnamidam. Purnat Purnamudachyate. From that whole or Purnam came this Purnam. Right now, this world. Okay, whatever was there before the world was manifest is Brahman. Right now, the world also has come. That also is Purnam only, complete, whole. So from that Purnam, this Purnam has come. Purnat Purnamudachyate. Fine. Then what? Purnasya Purnamadaya. You remove this whole from that whole. That means the world has become Laya has come. The world has again resolved back. Big crunch or whatever happens. Again you go back to a singularity also. That is also Purnam. Purnat Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya. Purnam eva avashishyate. That same Purnam alone remains. So how do we understand this? So it is simple. That's the Vivarta Upadanam only it is talking about. Gold is there as gold, correct? It can be in any form. But when a particular form is created from gold, still gold is there. That is also Purnam only, understand? It is the same weight, same quality. Okay. So there was a gold bar, then you made it into a bangle. So Purna Madaha, Purna Midam. Even now it is gold only. In every which way, it is the same gold. So from that gold only, this gold has come, correct? From the original whatever gold was there, this bangle, the golden bangle has come. Purnat Purnamudachyate. Then Purnasya Purnamadaya. So you remove. So now you want, no, you don't want bangle. So you destroy this form of bangle. Fine. Now what is there is also the same gold, correct? Gold doesn't undergo any change. So even though the bangle has resolved back, let us say, because all names and forms depend on the substance only. It has a dependent existence. That's why we call it Mithya. So from the Satyam, the Mithya Karya comes. Even while the Mithya is there, Satyam is there as it is without getting affected in any manner. Then if the Mithya goes back, it resolves. Then also the same Satyam is there. So that is the arithmetic of this Purnamadaha, Purnamidam. Understand that? So same thing here. Brahman became everything. Vividam Bhavati. From Brahmaji up to a grass without changing in any manner its nature. That is Vibhum. Okay, then Sarvagatam also. Very interesting word. So all pervasive. So when this Sarvagatam, if we talk about, so it has entered each and every, it is pervading means what? Even in another Upanishad it talks about Tat Srishtva Tadeva Nupravishat. So having created it entered. Okay. So the Sarvagata means it is pervading each and everything which is there here. Again, pervasiveness normally we associate it with space. Understand? Okay. But here, so because space is the one which gives the avakasha pradatra akashaha, like that we define. That which accommodates everything is space. So it's the one which gives the space, correct? So we are all in space, and space is in and through us. That's how it pervades. But still, whatever object which is there in space is not space. Understand that. There is a difference between space and the objects which are there in space. But the space itself is cognized in awareness, in my awareness, correct? Space itself can become an object of my awareness. But the consciousness itself does not become an object of anything else. So that is the only thing which is all pervasive. Even space is not really all pervasive. So when we say Sarvagatam or all pervasive, don't imagine that Brahman is spreading all over the space and all that. That kind of a thinking again is a problem. People even do meditation like that and all that. It will mislead you. When we say Sarvagatam, this Sarvagatam cannot be experienced because Brahman is both the subject and the object. As soon as you want to experience and create an experienced divide, it is no more Sarvagatam. Understand that? So this is only cognitively we can appreciate this. That Brahman is everything. It is the invariable in every cognition, in fact. And even in the cognition of space also it is there. The space consciousness is. So even for the very space, the existence is given by Brahman alone. And that Brahman is Sarvagatam. It is available. That is why it is available for knowledge in our own intellect, because it is Sarvagatam. It is available to us to know as a Sarvagata. Sarvagatam Brahma is available for us to know as our own self. And that's why it is Susukshmam also. Susukshmam means what? Sukshmam means subtle. Susukshmam means very subtle. It is the subtlest, whatever. So this is subtle because Brahman, knowing Brahman is not easy. Because I have already told you, all kinds of knowledge which we have gained is all objective knowledge. We are used to knowing things by objectifying. Brahman cannot be objectified. It's not an object. It's an eternal subject. But still, even after appreciating this, it's not very easy to get it. We want to experience Brahman and all that. Hey, you cannot experience yourself because Brahman is you. You are the experiencer. Brahman is the basis for both the experience and the experiencer. That's why it is subtle. It is Susukshmam. Okay, normally Sukshma we talk about. Also it doesn't have any qualities and all, correct? Avarnam and all we said. So normally all the Pancha Bhutas, each Bhuta is associated with one quality in our tradition. Okay. So Akasha means it is associated with sound or any types of waves we have to take. Okay, because waves travel in Akasha. Then Vayu is associated with touch, because that is the first. It has both. Again, Vayu also has waves, sound and all that, and you can touch it also because you can feel it. Then Agni is the first Bhuta, which is again visible also, correct? It has form. So it can be heard, it can be touched, it can be seen. Then water has taste also, you can taste it. And then Prithvi, earth is having Gandha. Gandhavatvam is the quality of earth or Prithvi. So each Bhuta is associated with one kind of guna. Okay. But Brahman does not have any of these things. So you cannot taste it, you cannot touch it, you cannot see it, but you have to know it. How can we know? The only thing which you know without using any of your sense organs, without touching, tasting and all that is you, correct? That is Brahman. You are Brahman. No other way you can know it. So that is the beauty here, but in one way it is very simple. In fact, it's not simplistic, but it is simple if you can get it. In fact, Brahman is the only thing which can be taught completely. It is because it is partless, it can be completely conveyed without any problem. A guru can teach a Shishya, and this is the only knowledge which can be completely transmitted. All other knowledge is only incomplete. You can be a great expert in any field. Finally, you will say that I know how much I don't know. The more and more you know, the more and more Ignorance also you are learning how much you don't know. But Brahman is the only thing which can be taught completely, because it is very subtle, but it is also Purnaha, it is complete, and it doesn't have any limbs and all that. So you cannot, there is nothing further to divide and know or anything like that. But because of this reason itself, it is very subtle, it is Sukshma. And Tad Avyayam, it never, Navyeti, iti Avyayam. Aksharam also we saw, Yaya Tad Aksharam Adhigamyate, similar meaning, imperishable. Okay, what today I know Brahman like this, what tomorrow if it changes, if it becomes old or it just vanishes, no problem. Brahman that cannot vanish anywhere, it doesn't change in any manner. It is the invariable consciousness which is always there as it is. Okay, then finally, Yad Bhuta Yonim. So it is also, okay, we say Brahman became everything, correct? So Brahman is the material cause and all. I was talking about Vivarta Upadanam, Vibhu the word is there. Then is it Jada then? Because I gave you the example of gold. Gold is not a conscious thing, correct? Gold is Jadam. So gold becomes many things without losing its own very nature. In the gold world, gold is there as the only reality, but it is not Chaitanyam. But here, that's why one more Shruti says Bhuta Yonim. So it is the cause for all the beings. Beings themselves are Chaitanya, correct? So it is not only the, here Bhuta means all beings, okay, living beings we have to take, or Pancha Maha Bhuta also you can take, whichever way you take. But here the main thing, the Bhuta Yoni, the cause of all the Bhutas. Why it has to say especially is because Brahman is also the Nimitta Karanam. It's not just the Upadana Karanam, it is also the Nimitta Karanam, because this whole world seems to be intelligently put together. There has to be an intelligent cause. Of course, there are some people who argue even now that there is a blind watchmaker and all. One guy has written a book. Okay. So, but they are only talking on of a very limited evolution and all that. So, evolution does not require any intelligence. Everything can happen over a long period of time. Something by chance only, whatever they call it, what natural selection and all that. So this whole thing has evolved. But even there are a lot of disputes are there. Nobody can say how consciousness has evolved and all that. They are not able to give any proper explanation for that. But some of these scientists look purely, even consciousness is a epiphenomenon of matter and all they say. So you bring all this brain together, something in brain, all the material things together, and consciousness springs. It is only a, so they have their own view about that. But there are others who challenge it also. So many people, scientists are also there who don't accept that view. But anyway, so here what we say is, for us the world is intelligently put together. Everywhere we go in this world there is intelligence, we can see it in nature itself. So all this intelligence has to be there in a intelligent being. So if you take the world as a cause, understand this, that if is a very big word, because many like Jainas and Bauddhas, Jainas particularly, they say that even in India they say world. So you say there is an uncaused cause, Brahman. They say world itself is uncaused. Why should you go to another thing and say that is uncaused and that caused this world? Let us say world as it is there like this only always. So they simply take the world itself as it is there without being caused. Why should you even look for any cause? because there is no way you can prove that world is a creation. Understand that logically there is no proof. Even the intelligently put together argument and all that is only an argument. It is not a proof. With just tarka and logic, nobody can ever prove the world is a creation. That's why that person can write a book called Blind Watchmaker still. And he has his own contention. So for this the answer is Shruti Pramanam. Shruti says that there is a cause. That's it. There is no more than that. So for a Shruti is a Pramana. And if Shruti says there is, then we have to go along with that in this. Okay, so Shruti is the main thing. So Shruti says Bhuta Yonim. Brahman is the cause. Vibhum. So it is the Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. Finally, Brahman is it is itself the material cause, it is also the intelligent cause, or any other type of causes which you can categorize. All types of causes, Brahman alone is for this entire universe. And then who sees this Brahman? Tat Brahma Dhiraha Paripashyanti. Paripashyanti also. Paripashyanti means they understand it completely with total clarity. The prefix pari also is important here. Not just pashyanti, paripashyanti. And dhiraha means vivekinaha, the ones who can discriminate, the ones who have this emotional maturity and cognitive ability to understand this Brahman, the ones who have the vairagya, ones who have chosen to know this Brahman. Those are the people who are called dhiraha. Okay, so this is the verse today we saw. We will continue next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam
Purnamidam
Purnat Purnamudachyate
Purnat Purnamudachyate
ते
Purnasya Purnamadaya
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय
Purnamevavashishyate
पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः
Harihi Om.
हरिः ॐ